The early Christian narrative of redemption, recovering pre-Pauline soteriology within the promise plan of God. The historical reconstruction of the early Christian narrative of redemption remains one of the most vital tasks for contemporary biblical theology. Rather than interpreting the Synoptic Gospels and Acts through later Western systematic grids, this study employs Walter C. Kaiser Jr.'s Promise Plan framework to recover the primitive soteriology. This text-dominant approach traces the single, unified, and progressively unfolding promise of God from the Abrahamic covenant in Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, through the patriarchal, Mosaic, Davidic, and prophetic traditions to its climactic fulfillment in the Messiah. It maintains both the organic continuity of God's redemptive purpose and the concrete, future-oriented promises given to ethnic Israel within the one people of God. Integrating this framework with Jacob Milgrom's cultic insights on sanctuary cleansing and the divine council worldview yields a coherent, non-supersessionist biblical theology. Early Christian redemption is understood not as a mechanical transaction designed to satisfy abstract divine wrath, but as the historical inauguration of the New Covenant. This act reverses the fractures introduced by the three compounding cosmic rebellions, Eden, the transgression of the Watchers, and the disinheritance at Babel, while restoring sacred space and covenant relationship. Section 1. The Methodological Challenge of the Pre-Pauline Narrative. Reconstructing pre-Pauline theology faces well-known historical and literary challenges. The Synoptic Gospels and Acts reach their final form decades after Paul's major epistles. A promise plan methodology, attentive to the final canonical form and the principle of progressive revelation, offers a constructive path forward. The Synoptics and Acts preserve authentic historical memory deeply rooted in Second Temple Judaism. Early traditions such as the Last Supper sayings and Peter's primitive speeches demonstrate clear continuity with Israel's story rather than the emergence of a non-Jewish religion. As Peter proclaims in Acts chapter 3, verse 18, "But what God foretold by the mouth of all the prophets that his Christ would suffer, he thus fulfilled." The apostolic witness anchors redemption firmly within the Tanakh's progressive trajectory. Section 2. Redefining necessity and divine sovereignty. A central pillar of the early narrative is the necessity, or dei, of Jesus' suffering and death. In the Hebraic cognitive environment, Yahweh exercises absolute sovereignty, unbound by external necessities. Divine mercy flows from his own character. Thus, the necessity of the cross derives not from an intra-divine legal dilemma, but from the fulfillment of the prophetic word within the promise plan. Jesus himself grounds this necessity in Scripture. Everything written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled. In Gethsemane, he affirms sovereign freedom while submitting to the scriptural plan. The cross, therefore, manifests divine fidelity in a rebellious age, exposes human wickedness, fulfills covenant promises, and gathers Israel's scattered flock. Section 3. Sacrifice as Petition, Cultic Cleansing and Martyrdom Traditions. The early church understood Jesus' death sacrificially without reducing it to mechanical substitution. In the Levitical system, blood functions primarily as a ritual detergent that cleanses the sanctuary from the defilement generated by sin, thereby preserving sacred space so that the holy God can dwell among his people. Applied to the New Testament, Christ's blood cleanses the heavenly sanctuary, removing the accumulated defilement that separated humanity from God's presence. This act enables the new covenant indwelling of the Spirit and advances the cosmic temple trajectory central to the promise plan. This cultic dimension converges with Second Temple Jewish traditions of righteous martyrdom, in which the deaths of the faithful serve as intercessory petitions appealing to God for national mercy in the end of exile. Jesus' crucifixion, as the ultimate act of covenantal fidelity, functions similarly, the offering of a blameless life that activates God's promised mercies and opens forgiveness to Israel and the nations. Section 4. The Inauguration of the New Covenant and Non-Supersessionism. At the Last Supper, Jesus declares, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." This inaugurates the core trajectory of the promise plan, God's commitment to be God to his people and to bless all families of the earth through Abraham's seed. The early narrative is explicitly non-supersessionist. Gentiles are grafted into Israel's nourishing root without annulling the concrete, future-oriented promises to ethnic Israel. James's interpretation at the Jerusalem Council illustrates this dynamic. The restoration of David's fallen tent catalyzes Gentile inclusion. The rebuilding of Israel becomes the means by which the nations enter eschatological blessing. The olive tree remains. The nations are incorporated into its life. Section 5. Realized eschatology and the resurrection as assurance. The early church maintained a dynamic realized eschatology. Although the cross and resurrection inaugurated the new covenant, the present age remains marked by brokenness and opposition. The resurrection functions as the first fruits, providing divine assurance of future cosmic restoration. Peter's sermons in Acts exemplify the already but not yet tension. Present forgiveness and times of refreshing anticipate the future restoration of all things spoken by the prophets. Section 6. The Divine Council Context and Cosmic Reclaiming. Within Scripture's supernatural worldview, the nations were disinherited at Babel and placed under the administration of lesser Elohim. Jesus' ministry, marked by exorcisms, authority over creation, and the events of the cross, constitutes a decisive assault on this rebellious hierarchy. Christ's blood decontaminates the heavenly sanctuary, disarms the principalities and powers, and enables the gospel's expansion to the disinherited nations. Section 7. Synthesis. The advantages of Promise Plan Theology. The Promise Plan framework reveals the coherence of the early Christian narrative without the artificial divisions or over-spiritualization sometimes introduced by other systems. Jesus genuinely inaugurated the new covenant in history. Its full eschatological realization, including the literal restoration of Israel and the renewal of creation, awaits his return. The Church expands the commonwealth of Israel rather than replacing it. Conclusion. When stripped of later scholastic overlays, the early Christian narrative of redemption stands as a monument to the organic unity and progressive revelation of the biblical canon. It presents a soteriology that is relational, cultic, and eschatological, grounded in God's sovereign fidelity to his promise plan. The cross reveals divine love and covenant loyalty, purifies sacred space, and establishes the foundation for a restored humanity and cosmos. This vision summons the Church to its royal priestly vocation as image-bearers, honoring the ontological dignity of every person while eagerly anticipating the full restoration of Israel and the nations within the renewed cosmic temple,